Is it important to believe we are endowed by our Creator with unalienable rights? That is the question we're going to explore today. Welcome back to Liberty's Hill, where we explore how can we create a world of human flourishing with liberty, justice, dignity, and prosperity. I'm Dr. Bill Brannan, a pastor in Liberty Hill, Texas. In the preamble to the Declaration of Independence, we read, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness." America's founding fathers boldly assert that the whole purpose of government is to secure people's God-given rights. This is a clear vision of how to develop a culture of liberty. I am convinced that as we explore good ideas, we will develop a clear blueprint and the skills to restore human flourishing. Many people today have a hard time with the idea of rights being God-given, and my hope is to convince as many people as possible that this idea is extremely important. Our founding fathers even appealed to the supreme judge of the world at the end of the Declaration. To understand the importance of these ideas, we need to consider that the greatest power in the world is wielded by governments, and the victims of tyrannical governments are people. If there is no authority higher than the government, then human rights are not intrinsic to humanity, but are granted by government. That means they can revoke human rights at any time. A world where human rights are arbitrary and granted by governments is a world heading towards tyranny. In a previous video, I discussed the idea of a liberty proclamation rather than a pride proclamation as a basis of unifying humanity. That suggestion only secures liberty if we have a clear understanding of what liberty looks like and an unshakable foundation to build upon. Grounding our liberties in nature and nature's God is the only way I see that we can secure them for all humanity. There are many people today who are offended by the idea of God or Christianity. I expect some of the ideas we're going to wrestle with will be hard to even listen to by both some atheists and some Christians. But what is at stake is whether we can found a foundation for liberty and human flourishing we can agree upon to build a better world. Our founding fathers relied upon two primary sources: the Judeo-Christian scriptures and the natural law tradition, especially as developed by Cicero. The goal is to establish liberty against all forms of tyranny and to promote human flourishing against every idea that destroys it. Here is what Cicero said on the Republic: "True law is right reason in agreement with nature. It is of universal application, unchanging and everlasting. It summons to duty by its commands, and it averts from wrongdoing by its prohibitions. And it does not lay its commands or prohibitions upon good men in vain, though neither have any effect on the wicked. It is a sin to try to alter this law, nor is it allowable to attempt to repeal any part of it, and it is impossible to abolish it entirely. We cannot be freed from its obligations by Senate or people, and we need not look outside ourselves for an expounder or interpreter of it. And there will not be different laws at Rome and at Athens, or different laws now and in the future, but one eternal and unchangeable law will be valid for all nations in all times. And there will be one master and ruler, that is, God, over us all, for he is the author of this law, its promulgator, and its enforcing judge. Whoever is disobedient is fleeing from himself and denying his human nature, and by reason of this very fact, he will suffer the worst penalties, even if he escapes what is commonly considered punishment." As a devout Christian, I am comfortable embracing this foundation for liberty from Cicero. We all have different conceptions of God, but if we can agree upon this statement, then we have a foundation to build a world of human flourishing. If you have a better foundation, please let me know. For Christians who have a hard time with this idea, please consider that Paul talks about the law of God being written on the hearts of all people, and that Gentiles who did not receive the law from God often show that law being written on their hearts. For a believer, I would argue it is the same law. If we believe that the world created by God declares his invisible attributes, then it makes sense that everyone who is sincere and uses reason and conscience should be able to discern it. God, as revealed in Scripture, is also under the rule of law. Biblically, nobody, even God, is above the law. That is because the law is an expression of his character and nature, which he cannot transgress. And the fundamental essence of his law is love. When we do not have a solid foundation for liberty based on unchanging truth, then a world of might makes right is what will develop. We can see how this works in my extremely simplified narrative of Socrates. Socrates fought the relativism that was destroying human flourishing in his day. The art of rhetoric became so well developed that great orators could make the weaker argument appear the stronger. People began doubting whether truth can even be known and began embracing subjectivism. When truth is relative, power is what determines truth. Rhetoric and the power to persuade by itself is neutral. When used within a moral framework, it is a powerful tool to promote what is good. When the power of rhetoric is not grounded upon a moral foundation, people will enrich themselves and promote their selfish ends at others' expense. Socrates saw that the only way to combat the degeneration of his culture was to pursue the ideas of goodness, truth, and beauty. Central to the war with sophism was the idea of the logos, the idea that there is absolute truth and that the world is ordered by reason. These ideas were the seed that became mature in the writings of Cicero. Without a foundation for human dignity and human rights, people are at the mercy of power mongers. That is not a world of human flourishing. My goal in this video is to encourage us to find a common foundation for human rights that is not determined by government. I understand the challenge posed by the diversity of worldviews people hold. My personal conviction is that we can only protect people's freedom of belief and conscience if we have such a foundation. To grasp the importance of this, consider the Nuremberg trials. The Nazis argued that everything they did was legal according to the laws of the land. All decent people knew that what they did was a crime against humanity. But without an absolute moral standard to which all nations are accountable, there would be no hope for justice to prevail. They resorted to the natural law tradition, as described very simply and briefly in this video, to prosecute them. The laws of nature and nature's God are universal, and human rights supersede the laws of nations. This is extremely important to a world of human flourishing. Please send me your thoughts and suggestions in the comments below, and please subscribe to my channel.